buffering. We got video output too low. That's some total nonsense right there. I don't. Technology is so mysterious. The way it just, sometimes it works, and sometimes it's just being a total jerk face. Even though you didn't really change anything, that you still got the same setup and the same buttons, same bells and whistles. It's all just. Anyways, I'll move past it. I wanted to share with you guys what literally just happened like a second ago. We had this crazy burst. It got all dark all of a sudden. Like you couldn't really see what was going on. Couldn't really see anything. It got really dark, and then it just started hailing like crazy. And it's already passed away by now, right? It's already back to sort of your regular calm, dreary afternoon. But this is something that happened. It just started hailing all of a sudden, and I think you're right. These are these sort of strange occurrences that just, I don't know, they remind me that something weird is going on. There's something maybe a little strange happening. This is not your standard experience, to have just massive downpour and hail happening all of a sudden. It's just not something that happens every day. I'm trying to say, at least around here, maybe where you live, hailstorms are just a constant, familiar occurrence. But around here, that's definitely not the case. That is definitely not the case. So I was just checking my levels here again. Let's switch over to live chat. Maybe the stream will stabilize. What even is the internet? What is its deal? Why does video output become so low? Now, before we get into a little bit of news, I just wanted to give you a closer view of this building that I referenced in a previous show, because I think it's worth taking a closer look at. Just the level of detail, complexity, variety. It's sort of unabated. No matter what corner you look at, it just seems like it took forever to carve, to put into place. Right? Each one of these faces here, it's like a work of art. I could picture somebody spending months just on a single statue here, much less carving everything into place. And another thing I think is interesting, you got the spikes for the pigeons. That's obviously a newer addition. But what I find interesting, if we just pause it for a second, you see these sort of rough-hewn stones as well as the more slanty carved stones. And that's something I notice on a lot of buildings here. You see it under here too, that this is sort of the rough-hewn, less refined look to it, but that's somehow also part of this style. But as with all these things, the more I sort of stare into the abyss, the more I think about who is that figure? Would people have recognized this statue at the time? Is that something people would have, who is that guy? Do we know him? Is he a friend or foe? So, right, no deeper philosophical understandings other than that, but I still think it was worth just bringing it up, just having it here on the stream. Now, I had to jump on here. It's obviously the middle of the night for most West Coast, East Coast American dwelling people, but I had to get on here because this information, it gets old and it loses sort of its power the more time goes by. So it's worth just getting in here and talking about the things, even if it is the middle of the night. And most of my friendly friends are probably sleeping at this point. But that's just fine with me. I still think it's just worth doing. So who is this guy, R.I.P. Taylor? I it wasn't really very familiar. It sounds like a name that you should know, or somebody that you know possibly should be familiar with, but this doesn't really spring anything to mind. This confetti and I guess it's from a more previous generation, somebody that is maybe hits a little closer to the baby boomers or those types of people. But I wanted to talk about it anyways, just because, again, with the dates and the names and everything, just sort of having this irrefutable symbolic layer layered on top of it. It's maybe a little callous to him, but that's why I named the stream R.I.P. R.I.P. Rip Taylor. And what I thought was interesting is that, right, he also died at 84 years old. There was another celebrity that we also just recently lost, who was also the same age, and that I just find interesting now, weeks apart, to have these important celebrity deaths sort of rippling through the global consciousness, and to have, well, not one but two important people seeming to die at this age, at this time, in this month. And as with all of these things, I'm not really sure or convinced that all this guy was famous for and all that he did was being an actor, comedian, and tossing confetti. I feel like there must be a deeper layer to it, that this is some sort of signaling to those that know, or that this man was actually in a much more powerful position in the underbelly, underlayer society than we're made to think, right? We're presented with the idea that he's just a comedian, he's somebody that gets to jump around and do what he does, but, right, I'm always thinking about those other layers of existence and hierarchies, that maybe this guy was a big deal in whatever secret echelon that we're not made to be aware of, and that's why this is trending. And possibly the same with that other lady that passed away last week at 84. And I think, right, I wouldn't put past him, even if these were very important people in the system, that they would still be used for their numerary, significance. I think even if you're the most important person in this whatever secret organization thing that we're trying to figure out here, even if you're an important piece of it, if you're a lifetime actor and it's something that you've been committed to your entire life, I still do not put it past the system itself to use these people as pawns or as symbolic sort of touchstones or meanings, right? Maybe he was aware that he was going to get knocked off at 84 and maybe made his peace with that. Or maybe he's just, he just took some of the vampire juice and is living now his life outside of the public sphere. And that this was sort of the great exit, the great celebration, and that everybody that actually knows what's going on, they know that this is just him signaling his retirement from his lifetime actor position, and that he finally gets to have a break now, actually. And maybe as with all these things, maybe I'm just talking out of my ass. Maybe I don't know anything about Rip Taylor. It's actually a pretty good chance. But on the other hand, right, you got to use your spidey sense, gut feeling when you come around this kind of stuff, and that's just the feeling that I get when I see this man. There's something more than him just being a confetti tossing actor. But a little more on that later. Right. Rip Taylor died Sunday. He had a seizure after suffering a seizure. Right, but we're going to look at a little bit later. He was heavily involved in the government, Washington, D.C., spent a lot of time in the military and all that other fun, important stuff. That, again, just all sort of leads me to think that this guy is more important than we were made to believe. Now, to switch gears absolutely, massively, and rapidly, there's been a lot of news about the Nobel Prizes, because that's just something that happens every once in a while, and then it obviously is going to get major press. But as with a lot of those other things, with politicians, with public figures, I'm sure there definitely is a layer of competition and frustration, people not getting the award that should have gotten the award, or politics involved in this. And then I think there really honestly is sort of a layer that knows for a fact, well, this person, this thing happened, that we're gonna, this is on the ideological bandwagon for this season or this year, and this is something that we have to talk about. Because that's the more media I suck down, the more sort of things that I peer into. You see concepts, important ideas, especially in science, getting released and sort of rolled out, and then flooded all throughout all spectrums and demographics of the society. So whether you're a 12-year-old boy just watching cartoons, or somebody that reads Nature and Phys.org every day, you're gonna be aware of this concept, what it means, how it works, just the basics of all of that. And that just gives me pause, basically, because how could it possibly be that important for 10-year-olds to physics professors to, science buffs, to everybody else, and in between have to know about the concept of hypoxia and oxygen availability, right? And this is something that I've heard talked a lot about in the cataclysm that happens. If you anybody out there listens to Jay Dreamer's, I definitely like his take on the whole subject, because it does what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to tie in to media and listen to the clues that they give you, right? Because they can't help it. That's they have to get the information out, the concepts out. But if you're able to listen to it, not in the way that they're expecting you to listen to it, completely passive and relaxed, but if you can actually perk up and see what they're talking about, then you may be able to read between the lines and possibly see what they're preparing us for. So something that Jay Dreamers talks a lot about, that when the cataclysm happens, there will be sort of a loss in pressure in the atmosphere and the environment. And that depending on where you are, the area that you're in, there will be, basically this massive loss of pressure, and that people will have trouble actually breathing and staying alive for this brief period while the pressure is getting sort of pressurized, right? And depending on your worldview, this might not make any sense whatsoever, that the planet itself could unpressurize, but it has a lot to do with the firmament and the dome and that getting pierced, the veil itself getting pierced in some way, and that people are basically going to get sucked up into the sky, and some people will not be able to control this. The people that are sort of tied down and maybe locked in some closet or something, that's the idea, that there's going to be a loss of oxygen, there's going to be a loss of breathable air, and that a lot of people, I guess if you have any sort of respiratory troubles, that they will just be exacerbated by this, and that only the strongest lunged of the survivors will actually be able to get past this point in the cataclysm. So, right, maybe that's all just nonsense and hearsay and some fun YouTube stuff, but here is the Nobel Prize seemingly directly related to that concept, that their research into what happens to bodies when they don't get enough oxygen. And obviously this story is, right, they're talking about climbing mountains and how people survive on Everest and other sort of issues, right? But I don't see that as the cover story, that right, first of all, this sort of research must have been done in the past before on hypoxia. It's not really a new concept or new idea, but it's a thing that I'm talking about where the ideas get inserted into the culture. Why is this concept being inserted and appreciated right now? Now, I'm not saying right, there were many other Nobel Prizes that were won. This isn't the only thing that happened in science at all, but it was definitely the major first rollout and well-known award to come out of that. And just very curious, to me at least, those connections to the coming cataclysm and this Nobel research that is coming out. Right, research new insights into treatments for anemia, cancer. So that you're right, they're obviously saying it's gonna help all these other sort of things. So discovery has already led to potential drugs that aim to treat anemia by fooling the body into thinking it is at high altitude. Right, so could this be a way to train people's bodies to be prepared for this loss of pressure, this loss of atmosphere, this high altitude feeling that we'll get when the cataclysm actually comes? Is this research that they've been doing, right? If you can give a drug or some kind of pill to prepare yourself for this so that when it actually comes, your body will be ready and won't actually give up and fall apart. That you would think would be very good research. There's some very good information to have, and if you have any sort of inside track or large sums of money, that obviously surviving the cataclysm would be at the top of your list, and a drug like this would be very interesting to you, right? And just in general, I guess looking forward or looking back, if we're going to be living underground or in some other sort of less comfortable than the surface life, then this is going to be critical research to make certain that the people that want to live or the people that they want to live will be able to live into this next phase. You know, if we're going to be underground, barely having any oxygen down there, or I don't know, going out into space, or just getting sucked up by the great cosmic eye. And I had to look this up myself. Hypoxia is a condition in which the body or a region of the body is deprived of adequate oxygen supply at the tissue level. Hypoxia is either generalized or local. Although hypoxia is often a pathological condition, variations in arterial oxygen concentrations can be part of the normal physiology. For example, during hyperventilation training. Right, so hypoxia is something that you can actually psychologically or physically induce on yourself, but I'd say what they're more worried about is protecting themselves from these plasma apocalypse, whatever you want to call it, event, the grand event that's coming. And it honestly is very hard to tell exactly when that's coming, because there are so many other threads running at the same time, and other important lessons that it seems like general humanity is going to be required to learn. The main one of those being the environmental disaster and collapse of the food supply that we're sort of currently sneaking into. And that's why you see, certain strange stories like this. Like China has lost so many pigs that they're basically breeding these like mutant style extra large ones from the ones that they still have left over. That's actually a need, something that they're going to need to do. I've been reading a lot of stories about how they're getting pork from Africa, that certain Chinese are switching their diets away from pork because it's getting very expensive and hard to get, right? And this is 2019. I mean, and there honestly hasn't been any major earth-shattering, painful things happen, on the scale that I think we're thinking of with some global cataclysm. If even a quarter of something like that happened, some biting frost or a real serious loss of life, right? The food shortage situation is going to look a lot different, a lot more dire and a lot more intense. But as with that sort of training that needs to happen, I see this is a critical part to that. This idea that, well, we're sort of screwed, but what are we gonna do? I mean, I guess we can just ride these polar bear-sized pigs around. And again, right, with the subconscious layer to everything, don't you think it's interesting that they chose the comparison animal to be a polar bear? That this character in our pantheon of ideas, that the polar bear is sort of a quintessential symbol for climate change and the plight of the biosphere, right? And that just by mentioning that name, it will trigger all of those feelings, those ideas back into you and remind you of that, even though nowhere in here is stated that idea of climate change or environmental degradation. Just by mentioning polar bears, the idea is brought subconsciously into this story. And right, if that's something I'm able to figure out on my own, I just highly doubt that they are unaware. Somebody like Bloomberg.com is unaware of the psychological effects that happen when you mention polar bears. Just, something maybe worth thinking about. Right? And again, with this sort of mirroring media and everything, not unlike the movie Okja, I guess that was, I missed that one. They were breeding massive pigs to maximize profits. Some Chinese are growing larger and larger hogs to keep up with the shortages, right? And so they're talking about some absolutely ridiculously huge pigs that are weighing 1,000 pounds. And that they generally sell for some good money, so it's still not a bad business to be in. But with all the difficulties, right, you see these farmers jumping through hoops, and I think that's the main important feeling, and I hate to be contributing to it as well, but the sense of dread about the future, about what's going to happen, who is going to be in charge, who is going to be running the reins, and the dangers that are going to happen in the future, because this sort of freezes people into place. You get that deer effect, and you basically don't move. You just wait and see. And I think they've got this effect down to a T, so they know exactly what to write, what kind of mix to put out there in the different demographic types, so that they can all but guarantee that the general, underlying emotional subconscious state of everybody, and I really mean everybody that has any sort of connection or relationship with media, be it CNN or some kids show, that they can honestly guide the subconscious and funnel it into exactly where they want, right? And this whole deep fake thing it's spot on with all that stuff. I gotta say, you know that there is something coming in the future where deep fake videos will it's going to be very important that you understand what a deep fake video is, how they're made, the possibilities for trickery in them, because there has to be some event that coming in the future that will involve these faked videos, right? Otherwise, I don't, from their point of view, I don't see it as a good use of resources and time to be writing all of these articles talking about deepfake videos, what they mean, what they could possibly do with them, right? And this just happened in California. Gavin Newsom is the first to make it illegal to post any manipulated videos that could, for instance, replace a candidate's face or speech in order to discredit them within 60 days of an election. So, right, if you get caught posting a video of a politician and right, you just do some basic manipulation, and that's the crazy part to me, that we're talking about 90s, mid 80s levels of digital manipulation, slowing down a video, maybe enlarging the eyeballs, right? This whole deepfake idea of switching face swapping is getting better, but it's also not extremely new. Right, and that's what again makes me perk up and start to pay attention again when you realize, oh well, this story or this event or this idea, well, this is like a good decade old at this point, right? Everybody was freaking out about Nancy Pelosi's video of her looking drunk, and all they did was slow the video down, right? That is not 2019 technology. That is early 90s. Going all the way back to early film, right? You can slow down videos, you can slow down audio. These are not new technologies, not things that have just sprung up in the last couple years or even months, right? That would warrant all of these articles as a genuine reaction to the developments in technology and society, right? And that's the feeling that I always get with this kind of stuff, that it's a disingenuous outrage and reaction, that this issue has already been on the table for an extremely long time. And it's just now that they're deciding to clamp down on it, explain it, and then put laws into place that will keep you from doing it. And right, again, I always try to look at where are we right now, where did we come from, and where are we headed, and play that out 10, 15, 20, 100 years. What happens next year during the election if people are starting to outlaw manipulated video? Are they going to make it harder for people to upload stuff, harder than it is even now? The fact that I can still do lives, I mean, that's one reason for me to keep getting on here, because I honestly don't think this is going to be something people in the future will be allowed to do. Just hop on the mic and just talk random purple elephants, USB, terrorism. What are some other things I didn't plan on saying? Pencil sharpener, And again, I mean, I don't want to go too deep down this rabbit hole, but if you've even worked in video, if you've ever edited anything or used Photoshop for 5 seconds, you'll be aware of how easy it is to manipulate video. I mean, maybe something like face swapping takes a little more time and energy, but in the meantime, there's tons of programs and plugins and other things that do all the heavy lifting for you, and you just have to plug in one little thing, and you're good to go. But what is it? That's what I keep asking myself. What is coming? What is the next stage that this is preparing us for? Because it's not an actual, honest, truthful look at technology and the state of it today. It is a funneling, a showing you, where it's supposed to be going. All right, so speaking of frost apocalypse. And so it really honestly hasn't been a terrible growing season. If you look at any of those agricultural types, like our Ice Age farmer, it's been pretty sketchy, but there's just been a couple things happening this year as far as crop loss that just really truly been next level. And because the global food supply has such sort of robust stopgaps and powerful, what do you want to say, just reserves, things that can offset the actual events of the year or the day. And I guess that's the theme of the podcast, offsetting the actual effects, right? So just like with the pork, there's huge problems in corn and grain and all these other sort of supply chains. But since they have reserves stored up, right, you haven't seen instantaneously massive rises in costs at the grocery store. That should probably actually already be reflected, but are being offset by these reserves. And if things keep going as uncertain and unsteady as they have been, it's only a matter of time before these reserves are depleted and we're sort of in trouble, right? And just this year alone, there's been a huge hit to just the general biomass that they've been able to create. It's heavily reduced, and now we're looking at right now having the growing season come to an end, and I guess it's not really supposed to yet. And there, I just thought that was a pretty dramatic screen grab from them, right? This is I guess it's supposed to be what is today? Man, there's too much to keep track. Yeah, I guess it's supposed to be tomorrow, where it sort of hits its peak, and that is definitely a scary looking, really cold purple blob there, floating over, I guess, where people tend to farm, and that's going to obviously cause some problems that it's this early in the season. And right, just like if I spent the night out in some field without any clothes and I was getting in the frost, I'd probably die, and the same will have to be said for, I guess, other potatoes and lettuce and other things. I guess you could put a sweater on them, put a sweater on that potato, but chances are, that's just not how that works, and a bunch of the crop's going to be lost. So again, you look at the past, you look at the present, you look at the future. Where is that? Where is that headed? Where is it headed? Right? And one thing that makes me think, that we're not about to just completely give up the ghost now. There's just so much information that we're sucking down these days, so many concepts and ideas that we're learning. And interstellar objects are no stranger to the news these days, right? We've got another one now, and this one has kind of different properties. And what I thought was interesting, just for bringing it for a second, that they found cyanogen gas in this most recent interstellar creature. Object, rock, or whatever you want to call it. This French astronomer is saying cyanogen gas would impregnate the atmosphere and possibly snuff out all life on the planet, right? And in the article they're saying, this guy is a joker, he's not telling the truth, don't believe it. But, right, don't panic. So, then I wonder why is an issue like this, why is a concept like this floated then at all? Just to debunk and made to seem stupid, or is there any actual truth to that? And just this general geoengineering, the idea that we're actually will be in charge of the planet, its functions, and that we honestly have no other way out of this situation. That we're going to need to get in there and tweak with the environment, right? And again, just like the digital manipulation, they've been manipulating the weather for so long now. The idea that they'd just be starting it now is sort of laughable to anybody that's done any legitimate research into the field. But again, here you see it being rolled out to the general public, to your 12-year-olds, all the way down to your just regular ass people. So anyways, enough about that. There'll be more climate related articles coming down the future, but I honestly don't think it's just my feed that's been blowing up, literally blowing up with asteroid fear porn. That there's tons of asteroids coming now. That, oh man, I guess we missed them this round again. That the asteroids are coming. They came by. And this made me think of that show / book Under the Dome, and how one of the main sort of harbingers, signals that the apocalypse or whatever is coming, is that the stars will be falling in lines. And we've definitely been seeing a lot of strange objects falling from the skies, right? Things that are asteroids, meteors, interstellar objects, also things that don't seem to be able to be explained, right? There was recently something over Chile, another thing in California, sort of like a bright green light that honestly nobody seemed to understand what it was doing there, why it was happening, and scientists seem pretty sure that it wasn't either an asteroid or a meteor, that it was some other sort of device. So I guess we got to stay tuned, but right, I hope we can see just the breadcrumbs that are being laid out piece by piece, day by day, one by one. So when the actual thing happens, nobody will be left behind, basically. So before I head out here, I just wanted to give 2 more seconds to the actual title subject. Mr. Rip Taylor. Mr. Rip Taylor, fantastic actor, known for, right? These aren't exactly like Oscar-winning, gigantic, important cultural milestones here. Wayne's World, obviously, good movie, but Indecent Proposal, it's a good movie. It's just not mind-bending. The Royal Emperor, the Aquabats show. Aquabats are pretty hilarious band, but right, just looking at this quick clip from IMDb, this is why I asked myself, why is Rip Taylor getting front page news? What is it about this guy? And then you look a little deeper, you're like, oh, trivia, was a congressional page in his teens. Well, what do you want to bet there's a good chance this guy is and or was somehow involved in government? That was somehow right part of his upbringing or understanding or everything in general. That this guy was a congressional page in his teens. He's been involved in government since a very early age. Right? And there's this strange quote about him saying, you know, Vegas is the entertainment capital. If you can make it there, you can make it anywhere. You know, he's not that into doing movies and TV, but he's into entertaining people. And, right, obviously, Vegas and everything that's going on there ties in heavily to the agenda and the direction that we're being pushed towards. So, right, I don't think it should be surprising to anybody that important comedians, at least of the previous generation, were congressional pages and learned most of their jokes, you know, in Washington, in think tanks or in congressional meetings or other sort of important governmental things. And that, right, once you get out and you're in Las Vegas and you've quote unquote made it and you have your career that probably nobody from Congress or any other sort of well-connected people helped you get into, that then these people that you helped out, you know, as a page many years ago, that maybe they'll come to you now that you're an important comedian and maybe ask you to say some things, do some things, talk about some things, and that you will happily oblige, because these aren't just some random people. These are your mentors, your major sort of guiding lights throughout your whole lifetime, if he was a congressional page in this team. So, you know, I'm not saying that's exactly how that all went down. It would just be very normal for you to respect your elders and teachers. He was born in Washington, D.C., son of Elizabeth and Charles Elmo Taylor. Charles Elmo Taylor Sr., a musician, right? He had a tough, and this is important, I thought, to pull out. Taylor, raised by these musicians, waitress, poor family, had a tough childhood, which included being molested while in foster care. You see this tying into the grand, you know, a bunch of words that I don't even want to say. But right, I personally wasn't surprised at all to hear that he had a tough childhood, that he had some trouble sexually as a young person, and that, right, maybe that possibly ties into this whole control power structure that we're trying to untangle here, right? Because right after all that molestation was going on, he went straight into Congress and worked as a congressional page, and after that went into the Korean War and the Army Corps. So, right, obviously whatever Kool-Aid he started to drink, he did not stop to drink, because he continued on to the military and other important positions there in the government, right? So now it's starting to make a little more sense why this particular comic is getting front page billing for his death. And also what makes me think a little bit, well, you know, he could be dead. That could definitely be possible. People do die, especially when they're as old as 84, but that's not a requirement for this story to run, is what I'm saying. Like, he could easily be dead, he could easily not be dead, but that has almost no bearing on them running this story at this time, using these specific dates, etc., right? And whether he himself was in on any of this or not, that is definitely also left open, and I guess he's not really around to ask anymore, but so we'll just leave it at that. Right, but just, this is just the Wikipedia. I bet if you looked in this guy a little more closely, you would find all sorts of weird stuff. But that he joined the Army, and he was performing stand-up at USO shows, right? A lot of his material were jokes stolen from acts he saw in USO shows. So, right, this guy's entire career evolved around military. And just, right, totally random that from there he landed a spot on the Ed Sullivan Show and ended up making a ton of appearances. Oh, well, I'm sure there was nobody in Congress or any sort of other important people that he had to talk to make that happen. Not a chance, right? Maybe a little chance. Tiny chance. Chance and a half? Okay, maybe like a quarter chance. You gotta give me like a quarter chance at least. Alright. Well, now we got a couple people here in the room. What's up, guys? Chat is closed. It's saying my chat is closed. How could my chat be closed? Maybe this chat has been running this whole time. And maybe that's like a key part of the psyop. Keep me discouraged that I can't actually, even when there are people interacting with me, that either the chat is closed or not refreshing properly. Dog, what the fuck? Yeah, see? It's saying my chat is closed, so not surprised again. But I always look forward to reading your comments, so maybe you can leave them after the show or something. I mean, it's entirely up to you. I don't want to tell you how to live your life. But as always, it's great to spend some time with you, whether silently or non-silently. And I guess I'll catch you on the flip side. Always more things happening.
You better keep it real. You better keep it fucking real, dog. 'Cause you can't be sure what's real and what's not real. I'm pretty sure this building is real, but the facts surrounding that building, they seem like they've been faked or messed with in some other way. It's hard to say, it's hard to say, it's hard to say. Who is this guy? He looks like he's looking at my camera. Like, what the fuck are you filming, dog? Look, he looks, he's like, what? What, dog?
Oh damn, Snap is saying the chat's active. Well, I'm curious to go check out the chat. And I'm also curious to why the chat wasn't working for me. Anyways, take it easy, guys.